JDiction have kindly sent me a new resin to try out and review for you, so stick around and find out more. Welcome to our Crazy Life Scotland. If you're new here, my name's Fiona and I do all sorts of videos on this channel, but this video is going to be a collaboration with the lovely people at JDiction Resin. Now, I have worked with JDiction in the past. They sent me a UV resin to try, which I really enjoyed, and that is now the only one that I use. Promise, cross my heart. It's the only one that I use. Every time I run out, it's JDiction that I buy because I really do like it. They then sent me their epoxy resin and I reviewed that and really liked it. But to be honest, I am still a novice at resin. And I really like UV resin because it's so simple. You squeeze it out, you do what you're doing with it, put it under the UV lamp and it's ready to go. It is so simple. I really like it. The epoxy resin is better for bigger projects because you make more at a time if you like, and you're not squeezing it all out of this bottle. You mix it all together and then it's good for large moulds and big projects. You can do so much more with it as well because it's not relying on a UV light. But I'm still a bit scared of it. I did use it when they sent me it to review and I really liked it, but I've hardly used it since because the whole mixing thing scares me. I don't know why. It's just weighing it and putting it together, but I don't know. Anyway, it is really good and I am going to get back into using it more again. But this time when they said that they have a new high viscosity UV resin, I was like, oh yeah, I'm all about that because again, it's UV, it's easy. Yes, please. So they have kindly gifted this to me and I want to have a shot of it. I want to play about with it, show you what you can do with it and let you know what I think. So this comes from Amazon. You can get it, you can probably get it other places as well, but I got this from Amazon. I believe it was £25, £24.99. I'll put it on the screen for you. But when it comes, it was on Prime as well, so it was free delivery and quick delivery. When it comes in this box, but when you open it up, I have got a tube of it here because I've been playing about with it. Let me show you. You actually get 3 bottles. So £25 for 3 bottles is brilliant. And as well as the bottles, which are here, you get a little user manual, instructions, you get the little pointy nozzles, which you take off that lid, take off the seal and pop that lid on, and it's much easier for squeezing into your your project. And, oh, I didn't even notice this, they give you gloves. It's very important to wear gloves when you're using resin, and I've got one of my projects stuck to it. I use this kind of glove, but these are probably better to be fair. Also has the hardening time on the back. So it tells you what kind of, if you've got an 8 watt to 9 watt lamp, do you know what, I'm going to put my glasses on, hold on, sorry about that, I couldn't see. So it tells you if your UV lamp is 6 watt to 9 watt, you want to cure it for about 4 to 5 minutes. If it's greater than a 24 watt, so quite a high powered one, it's about 2 to 4 minutes. If you're just relying on sunlight, which we wouldn't do here in Scotland because we get very little of it. If it's a very sunny day, it would take 2 to 4 minutes, and if it's a cloudy day, it would take 10 to 15 minutes. It does say it may change depending on the condition of the light, thickness of the work or other working environment, especially if you're adding things to it like mica powder, glitter, beads, that sort of thing, because it can be harder for the UV light to actually get through to thicken it, to set all of the resin. The top bit might get set, but the bottom bit might not. And then it's got your customer service guarantee. Now, I can assure you, JDiction's customer service is fantastic. I've spoken to them quite a lot, well, over email, and they're great. They get back to you really quickly. They are really good. So, let's have a look at some of the things that I have been making while I was playing with it. Because I hadn't used resin for a long time. I got busy with Christmas and things, so I was wanting to start trying resin again anyway, so this gave me the little push that I needed, and I have been back into my UV resin. Now I'm going to show you a couple of things that I have made with it already, and then we'll do a couple of projects on camera. So since it's coming up to Valentine's Day, I have been making some little heart things, and one of the first things that I made with the JDiction high viscosity resin is this lovely heart puzzle piece. Let me show you the mould. This is a mould. I think I got it from Etsy. I'll put the details on the screen if I can find them. I'm pretty sure it was either Etsy or Amazon. So it came, there was this mould which I made this from, and I'll talk more about it in a second. And it also came in the same pack as this mould, oops, which is a moon and star, and I'll show you what I made with that in a second. Let's have a look at this. Now this was made with only using the high viscosity UV resin and some red mica powder, which I believe is also from JDiction. Bear with me. Yes, all my mica powder came from JDiction as well. They're a brilliant company. They're very accessible with being on Amazon. They've got great customer service and they do loads of different things. So as well as the resins, they do mica powder. So I got this one. I think I was maybe gifted this one as well, and you get so much in it. So it was this mica powder that I mixed with the UV resin, and I used this mould and made this heart, and as you can see there's little iridescent heart sequins in there as well. I can't remember where I got them from, but it just shows you the effect that you can get with the UV resin. Now if you have a look, I haven't domed it perfectly, but it feels very smooth, and I am very, very proud of that. It's got the little heart bit there if you wanted to wear it as a locket or hang it up for Valentine's Day. I have got a different project in mind for it, so if you subscribe to my channel you'll find out what I'm actually doing with it. So that, I made that. Now the moon and star one I made twice, because the first time I did make a bit of a mess of it, and it's because I tried to use the high viscosity UV resin for all of it, and as you can see it is quite a big area, and to be honest I think the main area would have been better with the lower viscosity UV resin. But you can see that I've got little moon sequins in the moon, and I've got little star sequins in the star, and again it was JDiction mica powders that I used with that. But if you look at the back of it, it is a little bit messed up. I think I maybe used too much pigment in it, and it didn't cure properly on the bottom, and it's a bit, if you look at it, it's very uneven, and the point there, and again I think because it was so thick it didn't get into the point properly. But so that was a first attempt, which is still passable, but I certainly wouldn't give it to a customer. My second attempt was a bit better, because I actually used the JDiction normal UV resin, and I used that for the majority of it, and I put the little moons and stars in, and for the star I just used silver glitter rather than the mica powder, and I think that worked out a bit better. But you will see, because the mould all in one, you can see the little hole there so that it sticks together. You can see where, because I've used the thinner UV resin, it has actually gone into the bottom of the star, which I don't mind. It kind of gives it a nice ombre effect, but I'm thinking if I use the thicker, the high viscosity UV resin in the star, that will give me time to cure it before it runs into the moon bit. So I think that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to attempt to see whether using the higher viscosity resin will stop that from running into the other part of the mould. Now, the other thing that I did was this, which I think is lovely. This was originally, look at the difference, how amazing is that? And I basically used some of the red mica powder for the bottom of it, and then I used some red glitter for the top, and I domed it all, including the actual wooden edges. Because it's high viscosity, it didn't run into the little holes, which was great. The main use that I can see for it is doming, because it's very thick, and watching other people using it, it makes it much easier for doming. Again, I'm not an expert, so my doming isn't perfect yet, but that certainly looks like, and doming is basically just when you go from having a sort of flat resin to having a nice little shiny sort of, not shiny, but a nice edge on it that makes it look pretty, if you know what I mean. It domes slightly. So what I want to do though is I want to attempt to see whether the thick UV resin will be suitable for small projects like this. Now obviously this is a bell, this was, it's actually a shrinky dink, and it starts off life on thin plastic, and it's much bigger. You put it in the oven and it goes down to that size, and it's a very hard plastic now. So what I want to attempt to do, normally I would colour in the plastic before putting it in the oven, but with this I wanted to see whether I can use the high viscosity UV resin to colour it without it going everywhere. And you can see there are very small areas, so I'm going to give that a go. It might be a fail, and if so, it won't be the product's fault, it will be my fault. It's maybe too adventurous, it's maybe too adventurous for a novice like me, but we're going to give it a go. So anyway, without further ado, I am going to turn you around and we're going to start making with this high viscosity resin. Let's get started. Right, so I've got my silicone mat here that I work on. I've got my mould. Let's try and use this one first. I will put my gloves on. I've got my UV lamp there. It's a nail lamp that I use. I don't know what wattage it is, but I do make sure that I give it a good sort of 4 minutes curing time. They're rather large. I have got small hands anyway. I have to say it would be easier without gloves, but safety first. And I've got my little bag of tricks here, or my little box of tricks. It's got different mica powder, sequins, things like that. Right, so the first thing that I'm planning to do is try to make the star with the high viscosity resin and see if I can cure it before the resin all moves into the moon part. So I'm just going to mix up some of the high viscosity resin. That, look how thick it is. Oh, it is so satisfying. It's lovely and thick. So I'm going to pop that in there. Now, because, like I said, we're in Scotland, another good thing about the UV resin is you've got plenty of time to work with it, because it's not going to cure. It's not like epoxy resin, which has got a, you know, sometimes it's got quite a quick cure time and you need to work quickly. This won't actually cure until I put it under the UV lamp, so I have got time. I am going to use this little gorgeous tiny spoon that I got. I think it came with that red mica powder from JDiction, and I'm just going to put in a tiny amount. This is just normal silver glitter. I'm going to pop that in there. I mix up. Sorry if the noise of the gloves rustling is a bit too much. Now what you will see is, because it is so thick, I felt like I had put quite a lot of resin in there, but there's actually not much at all. So I'm going to add a little bit more. This will give you an idea of why you can't really use it for large areas. I think that's why I struggled with the moon, because it is so thick. You don't want to be using too much. Right, so I'm just mixing it up with the silver glitter. And when I was doing this before, I was just using these little dotting tools to put the resin in the mould, but I have invested in some silicone brushes, which will hopefully help the process. I got these silicone brushes with the different tops on them, so they should help. Normal epoxy resin and even the normal UV resin you would be able to pour in, but look at that, that's how thick it is. And that is a good thing, because high viscosity resin you wouldn't want to use for everything, but it's definitely got its place. So let's just try to put some of this in here. trying to keep it away from the little hole where it goes into the moon at the moment. Right, I am now going to cure this under my UV lamp. I'll come back to you soon. Now while that is curing, I am going to mix up the gold for the moon. Now you do need to make sure you turn the UV light away, because if the UV light was facing me, it would start to cure while I was mixing it. So I am going to put in, now this is just JDiction normal UV resin. Like I say, it's the only UV resin that I use now, and it's just a hard type. I've not got very much left in this bottle, but I do have another bottle if I need to use it. And I am going to use the Pearl Gold mica powder. Look how thin that is compared to the high viscosity one. So I need a fair amount of it. Pop this on again. Again, because it's UV resin, you don't want to use too much mica powder, because the UV rays need to get through. So I've just got a tiny wee bit on there. Pop that in, give it a stir, give it all a good mix up. Now, rookie error, what did I forget? I always forget to do this. I forgot to check for bubbles in the star. I was so desperate to want to get it put under the UV light. Right, let's see how this is doing now. It is, yep, nice and hard. And you can see it has run slightly there. Oh, look, there's a big bubble there, but it hasn't ran out there, which is what I wanted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the gold UV resin, just a thin layer of it at first, and cure that before it has a chance to run into the star. But I'm hoping the fact that the star, there's a bit of the star already cured, it won't run in too much. Look at the difference in the viscosity of it. I'm not going to pour it exactly where the star is. I'm just going to gently tease this into the corner. Now, because it's a very, very tight bit of the mould, I think that's why I messed it up the first time. And try to keep it away from the star. We need to put it in a little bit because we want it to adhere. We don't want them to be separate. Just going to cure this a little bit to make it tacky, and then I'm going to add the sequins. Right, so that has only had 100 seconds, so it won't be fully cured, and I've got a hair on the mould, which is an occupational hazard when you have 4 dogs. I've been a little bit cautious, as you can see where the star is. I'm going to have to add a bit more of the gold in there, and then I'm going to add some little sequins to the star and the moon, and then cure it again. Like I say, in no way am I an expert. I'm still very much a novice when it comes to resin. Right, so what I'm doing just now, I'm just painting a very thin amount of the gold resin so that the sequins can stick to it. This is my little sequins box. So if I turn it over, I can see we've got moons there. I'll take my gloves off at this point because I'm not touching the resin. Just a couple of the moons, I'll drop them in, and then I can use my wee dotting tool to move them about a bit. And because I've got a layer of cured resin, they won't float right down to the bottom, but because I've put a fresh layer of resin on, they should pretty much stay where I put them. Now, because this is just a demonstration video, I'm not too fussed about exactly where they go. I'm going to do the same with the star. Now, this is a high viscosity resin, remember? So I'm going to use this. I've mixed it ever so slightly in with the gold, but that was my fault. And I suppose it would be nice to have a bit of an ombre effect, wouldn't it? Got little star sequins in here. I'm pretty sure these are actually nail art sequins, and I think I got them off Amazon, but I honestly can't remember. It was a while ago. Like I said, this is just an example to show you how you would use the resin. It's not going to be a professional piece by any stretch of the imagination. Right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pop another bit of the gold resin on top. Again, I'll try not to go too close to the star. This is the normal UV resin, remember, it's not the high viscosity one. I'll just leave that a wee second to settle on its own. It'll go where it wants to go. And I don't know if I've got any of the silver left. Let's try. Again, if I pop this on here, it's probably going to move all the stars. You can see now the gold is running into the star. So that, again, is my fault because I put quite a lot of the gold resin in, forgetting about the fact that there was still space for it to run into the star. So this is not the high viscosity one, remember. I'm going to quickly cure this now to stop it running any more. Right, this has had about 2 minutes, so it's not going to be properly cured. But yeah, you can see where the gold has run in a little bit, but not as much as it did on the other one. And what I'm going to do just now, again, I didn't pop any bubbles. Do as I say, not as I do. I'm going to turn this over. I know it is quite opaque, but we might be able to get some of the UV light into the bottom of it because I don't want to demold it and then discover that it's still wet on the bottom. Oops, move the resin out of the way. Right, let's mix some of this resin up for the bell while we're at it. That's the other good thing about UV resin. You can be working on a couple of projects at a time. So, got my high viscosity resin here. Squeeze a wee bit on there and I'll mix that with some of the gold. Again, just a tiny, tiny amount that we want. Maybe more than that, Fiona. It has to actually come off the spoon. Just a tiny amount. This very fine silicone brush to try to brush it on. Hold it in place with the tweezers. Sorry the light isn't great, my arm is now in the way of the light. And I'm just going to try to gently paint this on. Just a thin amount at the moment will be fine. Now because this is nice and thick, it's generally staying where I want it to be. Right, I'm going to cure this bit while I look at the moon. Not literally. It's daytime, not nighttime. Again, make sure your working resin is out of the way of the light. So, this is where we are just now. I'm going to try to demold it and see what happens. Now, it's not 100% cured. Definitely needs a bit of a trim. But it hasn't gone through too much into the star. This is a right way up. I'm going to give this a bit of a trim with some scissors and then I'll come back to you. Right, I've given it a bit of a trim. I've taken my gloves off just now because it's pretty much cured. You can see where the little moons are in the moon and the little stars are in the star. But if I put it that way, you'll see how uneven it is. And that's basically because I was doing it in a hurry and just for demonstration purposes. But what I'm going to do now, I would probably even it out with more of the colour. But because this is just a demonstration video, I am now going to use just the clear high viscosity UV resin to try to dome it a bit. I'm not wanting to waste too much because it is just a demonstration piece. There's my little bell, which has had only a minute at the moment, so it's not properly cured, but I'm just going to put that out the way just now. This, as I say, is just experiments. It's purely experimental at the moment, especially the bell. Going back to my high viscosity UV resin, and I am literally just going to squeeze it on. And I'm going to leave it for a few minutes to settle where it wants to settle, because UV resin is pretty much self-leveling. So if we leave it for a wee minute or two, it should go where it wants to go, where it's needed, and then we can just give it a little help with the brush. But I am going to need a fair amount just now, and because it is so thick, it hopefully won't run over the edges. Right, while that is self-leveling, I am going to go back to my little bell. Here's my bell, and you can see the gold on there, which is nice. I'm now going to do the gold in the inside bit. I could maybe make it a darker gold, but at the moment, again, it's just an experiment, so I'm not too fussed about doing that just now. So I'm going to take some more of my gold. This is a high viscosity, and I don't want to get it at the dong bit of the bell. The dong bit, you know what I mean, the clanger. Somebody comment down below and tell me what it is. I don't know what it's called. I'm not into bells, except the ones at New Year. There we go. Now, I am liking the fact that it is so thick. It's definitely staying where I want it to stay. Now, again, I haven't I'm not letting it settle or popping bubbles. I just want to see if this is actually going to work. I'll give that a minute under the lamp and let's have a look at this. Right, so this has been self-leveling for a few minutes now. Just going to have a wee looky and see how it's doing. Give it a wee help in some bits. Now when you're doming, you're meant to start from the middle and gently push it out to the edges. Like so. I can use the same brush for the moon and the star now because it's just clear resin that I'm working with. Right, I'm going to give this a couple of minutes under the lamp just now. Sorry if the angle's changed, I knocked you over. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to mix up a little bit of the silver glitter. I'm not going to pour as much on this time because I've made way too much of the gold. So just a tiny wee splodge. That's a technical term, a splodge. This time I'm actually just going to put my dotting tool in the glitter to get some on. I was worried that the glitter would clump in the high viscosity resin, but it's actually not too bad. I'm not using my brush because I've got some of the resin and glitter on my dotting tool anyway, so I'm as well just using that. And what I'm thinking just now, this is going to give a bit of a stained glass effect, I would think. But if I wanted a more like opaque colour, I would be better to colour the plastic before shrinking it, and then just going over it with the coloured resin. But I thought it would be easier for demonstration purposes to show it like this without any colour under it. So I'm actually going to put a little dot at the middle bit of the bow, like so. I'm going to pop that in the UV light as well. Again, I'm needing to trim it a little bit, but it's definitely a lot more even now than it was. But like I say, it's still sticky because it's not 100% cured, but I think it's looking not bad. And what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to give it another wee trim off camera, and I'm going to put another layer of the high viscosity resin on it just to try to even it properly See there, I've not got my nail file. I can't find my nail file for filing it down. But off camera, I am going to try to dome that a bit better. Just quickly add some red to this bell. Sorry, I dropped you again. I'm not very well set up for this at all. Right, let's quickly mix up a little bit of red. Right, so I have cured this for about 3 minutes. And as you can see, it has got a bit of a stained glass effect. Wait, I'll see if I can put it against a white background. So it's got quite a stained glass effect because I just used the resin. And I think if I was to colour that before shrinking it and then just add the accents with the resin, I think that would be really nice. Do you not think so? I think that's lovely. Now, I've not put a clear layer over it to dome it at the moment, so it's not properly domed, but it gives you the idea of what you can do with the high viscosity UV resin. Now, if I was to use normal epoxy resin or even the normal UV resin, it would probably be too runny to stick to where I wanted it to go, but because it was a high viscosity, it has stayed exactly where I want it. The other side, you can see, is just shiny, so you could actually dome both sides if you wanted. That's just the plastic. That's the side with the resin. You could dome both sides. You could use these as little Christmas decorations, Christmas charms, whatever you wanted basically. But it's just to give you an idea of what you can actually do with the high viscosity resin. Started painting half of this heart. Now you can see I've deliberately left one side plain and the other side with the gold. Sorry about the dog. And the other side has got the gold resin on it. And as you can see, it hasn't gone through any of the little holes, because it's the high viscosity, and I think that is fab. I'm not going to have time to do this full heart on camera, but I will do a separate video on how I made this using the high viscosity UV resin, and I'll do it with this, but I'll make it gold probably, just to show you the difference. So I'll do that as a separate video on my channel, but it just gives you an idea of exactly what you can do with the resin. So here is our moon and star. I did put another layer of resin to try and dome it, but I haven't done a great job. That is not the resin's fault, it is my fault. But you can still get an idea of how you can use, you can see where it's domed there. You can still get the idea of how to use high viscosity resin where it's got a place. You can see the potential that this has got. I've just not basically lived up to it. So I'm going to turn you around and let you know exactly what I think of this JDiction resin. Oh, what do I think of JDiction's resin? I think it's brilliant. I said that at the beginning, only JDiction resin that I use, and I really enjoy it. I've never had any problems with it. The UV resin in particular is so easy. As I mentioned earlier, it does have its limitations because you don't want to be doing massive big moulds with it. It's just really for smaller areas. But what I was really focusing on in this video was the high viscosity UV resin, which JDiction kindly sent me. And I have to say, I think it is fantastic. I think my resin skills need a lot of work, a lot of improvement. However, the actual resin itself is amazing, and again, it's another product that I will repurchase. I'm always honest and open on this channel. If I didn't like it and wasn't going to repurchase it, I would tell you. A big lorry has appeared outside, and that's what the dogs are going mental at. As I was saying, just very quickly, I will definitely use the high viscosity JDiction UV resin, and I believe it's got its place. It's not something that you would use for everything, but when it comes to doming or for little areas that you want to resin without it running everywhere, I definitely think the high viscosity UV resin is excellent. This is what I made today. It's not fantastic, but that is my fault, not the resin's fault. And again, I've got a lot less bleed into the star with this one as I did with that one, because I used the high viscosity resin in the star first, and then I used the lower viscosity in the moon, so it didn't bleed nearly as much as this one did. There's nothing wrong with that one, to be honest. You know, I quite like the ombre effect, but if you're wanting to keep them separate, that is a good way of doing it. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you again to JDiction for sending these out to me. I will put the link to this product from Amazon in the description below. It's not an affiliate link. I don't get anything if you click the link and buy it. However, if you are wanting to give it a go, then it just makes it easier for you. So I'll put that link there, and thank you again to JDiction. Thank you again to all of you for watching me. I promise I'm going to work on my UV resin skills, just my resin skills in general, and I will put some other videos up on a Wednesday on this channel showing how I make different bits and pieces of crafts, including my progress at using resin. Thanks very much, everybody. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up button, talk to me in the comments below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in our next one.